Hey, what's up? Welcome to another edition of the post fight show from the Mandatory. Remember, if you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Also, follow us on our social media channels. We're at the Mandatory TKO, and we're going to get into everything. We're going to take your comments as well. We're going to break down the undercard, some of the fights, and what we saw. But of course, we got to start off with Canelo Alvarez getting it done against Edgar Berlanga by unanimous decision. And, no surprise, really. I think people thought that Canelo would win. But I think the bigger surprise was the fact that Edgar Berlanga went the distance. I was one of the people that said, you know what, I think it's going to happen between rounds 5 through 8. Some people had it Canelo winning between 1 through 6, but I thought it was an impressive performance because he was able to last the full 12. We're going to break it all down. Let's start off with Bryan Fonseca, though. Your fellow Puerto Rican lasted all 12 rounds against Canelo Alvarez. Your thoughts on his performance?
I said before this that, well, one, he could probably make it to distance because I felt like Canelo Alvarez was going to enjoy this a little bit. I don't think that's why it went to distance. We'll get to that later. But I ultimately think that Edgar Berlanga could have won this fight by losing, in terms of like you can raise your stock because he's not going to beat Canelo Alvarez, but you can raise your stock by showing enough moments, going the distance, yada, yada, yada. Some people will be disappointed by the performance overall. I think he got 2 rounds, I think 6 and 7 were rounds that Canelo Alvarez probably took off. And 118, 109 was the scorecard that I had it. A couple of the judges the same. I saw some people thought that Canelo Alvarez had a sweep. I don't think it matters because we all know he dominated. But Edgar Berlanga, like, he had some entertaining moments to the point where I think he's going to get another money fight or two because of his performance. Like, he gets dropped early on, round 3, perfect left hook by Canelo Alvarez. And it was not surprising because that was my favorite bet on the fight was Canelo Alvarez to score a knockdown. And one of them was for him to score a knockdown specifically against Edgar Berlanga within the first 6 rounds. He did that. And Edgar ends up, like, he gets up, he responds well. His chin, as we've known and we talked about, kind of suspect, but he was fine the rest of the fight. We can get into like the strategical elements of this. There were some things in terms of like strategy that he was trying to deploy that I wasn't particularly a fan of, but he got to distance, and it's not like he was running, quote unquote, the entire time. Now, I felt like he could have fought an even smarter fight, a better fight, but and he did show some fire late, particularly and at other moments throughout. But he's going to get another money fight after this. Like, I'm pretty sure people are going to want to see him fight Jaime Munguia. People are going to want to see him fight Calen Plant. I think a good bounce back fight for him would be Trevor McCumby, sort of spoiling what we're going to talk about later. But I think there's a lot that could be said for his performance, despite the fact that he was getting his ass whooped for a good amount of it.
Yeah, there's so many pros to this, despite the fact that Berlanga did lose the fight. I mean, going into it, when Canelo Alvarez ends up picking you to be his opponent, already your stock is going to rise a bit because he's a rising star. And when you fight Canelo, you're going to get a lot more publicity and you're going to grow as a star in boxing. And the fact that Berlanga, he got dropped in the 3rd round, as you mentioned, I thought he recovered pretty well in that 4th round. Now, I wasn't the biggest fan of how he was fighting. I didn't like his game plan because he is the bigger guy in the ring, but easier said than done. I can easily say, well, you should try to have the fight in the middle of the ring. You should stay off of the ropes. You should try to move around a little bit. But I also think that he should have tried to be a little bit rough with Canelo and try to aggravate him, which we saw that a little bit as well throughout the fight. But for me, I thought Edgar Berlanga, he's only going to gain from this. To go the distance with Canelo Alvarez, for sure, another big money fight. I think everyone kind of wants to see Calen Plant and Edgar Berlanga as well. But I also think him and Jaime Munguia is interesting because, of course, Munguia didn't get to go the distance with someone like Canelo Alvarez. So even for that point, I feel like Berlanga has a little bit more of an edge than Jaime Munguia if that fight was to happen. But nonetheless, I feel like
Jaime Munguia made it to distance with Canelo Alvarez.
I thought he got dropped.
No,
No,
he got dropped. Yeah, but he didn't get
yeah. Oh
stopped.
yeah. He got dropped.
He almost got stopped.
But I thought that Berlanga's performance was just as good, if anything better, than Jaime Munguia's.
I agree.
So, in that sense, it is very impressive for Berlanga. And I thought his post fight comments actually made him more likable, because he's such an unlikable guy to a lot of people. So I think, but he's good for boxing. And I've said this when we were previewing the fight, that I thought that he's good for boxing because he's a superstar. You saw the way that he came out, and he's really young. So it's only going to be better for him as, his career goes on. And yeah, I thought he was a little bit humble near the end, and we've never seen Edgar Berlanga humble ever. I don't think. I've never seen it like that before, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, in interviews and stuff like that. But I mean, we gotta hold on. Donation, thank you, Al Pau. Super chat, didn't I call it 12 rounds? Canelo just knocks out Europeans the easiest. Shantelle is not Dominican, Joseph. Thank you for your comments. So, what's it called? We have
such a random question. What a random question, but yeah, okay, go on.
Yeah. We're both from very different parts of the world. Well, I mean, not currently.
Well, not really. We're both from
our families.
Yeah. We're
both
definitely
from different parts of America, so to speak.
Yes, exactly.
But
North America.
North America, yeah. I mean, you claim the West Coast, which I believe the West Coast will claim you as well. So that's important. And this fight was on the West Coast. Edgar Berlanga, I mean, I think he's one of the more interesting guys in boxing, not from the standpoint of like how good he is and he's going to be a superstar or whatever. But again, he draws strong reactions out of people. There are a lot of people who can't stand this dude, and there are a lot of people who really like this dude. And you've said this numerous times, and I've seen it as he's grown, even here in New York City, where celebrities are around him. They want to be around him. They want to believe in him. He walked out there with Fat Joe, Arcangel, and I'm forgetting the other dude's name, but I'm not as familiar with him, but another Puerto Rican artist. And
I thought that was dope. Like, yeah. I loved it. You could tell he was a superstar when he was walking out. Should we go to Al the Pal? Because if you donate to the show.
We already did. We just did that.
Okay. Well, I must have missed it. So we're going to put up one more time, but we're going to leave it right there. If you donate to the show,
I read it quick. That's what it was. We just got through it. Joseph asked another question. We're going to get to UFC later, potentially. And we'll get to Erislandy Lara and Danny Garcia later.
Yes, we have
to talk about that. But yeah, I think Edgar has a lot of options here, which we'll probably spend a couple more minutes on. There were a bunch of other fights in this card, but yeah, ultimately I think he's going to raise his stock here, even though he only won like 2 rounds. Like, if you look at Canelo's recent fights, and this is something I want to ask you, right? Like, Canelo Alvarez, again, as I've pointed out numerous times, has not gotten a knockout in 3 years. He may be at that stage where he's just not knocking people out, because I think he was trying to get the knockout. He couldn't do it against somebody who he dropped early on in the fight. And you
can tell, but you know what? Like I was comparing it to the Jaime Munguia thing. I feel like Berlanga is a lot stronger than Jaime Munguia.
A lot stronger. Okay, that's interesting.
He just, like, the way that they looked after they both got knocked down. In my opinion, because I knew right away, I was like, okay, Jaime Munguia, like, it's a wrap. Like, Canelo's going to finish this, right? But Berlanga, he recovered a little bit better, and then that he has that power.
Yeah.
And we'll get into how he fought.
I wish he showed more of that power. I'll say that much.
He fought kind of scared, I feel like.
I think so. Okay, here's we'll get into this now. Here is my issue with his performance. He was trying to, and yes, you should try to use your reach against Canelo Alvarez. Many have tried, many have failed, but still, if you haven't, try to use it.
Here's the thing. Like, if you're going to fight Canelo, just go for it.
Right.
Like, that's how I feel, right?
I don't mind, and I actually agree with what he was trying to do early on.
Yeah.
Use your range, use your jab. But the problem was Canelo Alvarez was not respecting that jab. Canelo Alvarez kept walking him down, and backing him up into the ropes. And his corner, Edgar Berlanga's corner, kept being like, yo, get the fuck off the ropes. Like, what are you doing? And oh no, these different things. And with Edgar Berlanga, he couldn't get Canelo's respect early on. And then eventually, like, he was able to just at some point toward the very end say, all right, whatever, let's just start throwing punches now, letting it fly, which I thought he could have probably done early on. But he was trying to, like, he had his left hand low. He was trying to use his sort of reflexes and counter punch, and I don't think he's quick enough to really do that against Canelo Alvarez. Like he was able to do it against McCrory, but totally different level here. And
Yeah.
if he has another fight, like I think, listen, I think if he does the MSG Theater again, or if he does the Barclays Center his next fight, whatever, like I think that's going to sell well as long as you get him a decent opponent. But you could get him a win early next year and then have him in another big fight next summer, next fall.
Yeah, for his performance, I just wanted him to get off the damn ropes. Like, impose your will a little bit, because you look at them in the ring and Edgar's bigger than him. But
Yeah.
Canelo's fought bigger fighters, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But I just feel like when you're that much bigger, I don't really want to bang with you in the inside. Like, I know he changed his game plan. Pause, right? Whatever.
I was gonna say that's a drop.
Yeah.
We don't
No,
really
like
do drops here, but
I
still.
did. Yeah, we got to get drops though. That's hilarious. But I just feel like that was the wrong game plan. Like, I wanted him to throw a little bit more. I wanted to see that power. I wanted to see him land on the body. Edgar Berlanga has gotten better. And I think what honestly kind of worried me the whole time is he was leaving his chin exposed. And I was surprised that Canelo wasn't able to get him out of there.
Me
because
too.
because he kept dropping his hands too. And it was right there for him. So is Canelo at the point where we're not going to see stoppages or knockouts from him? Like, is he at that point? Because it's been a long time.
November 6th, 2021 against Calen Plant, who got stopped. That's an interesting thing. Like I think Calen Plant did better than
a lot of people think, actually. I thought he fought him well.
Yeah, I thought he fought him well early on, and then he got broken down late, which, that kind of happened against Dave Benavidez too, except didn't get stoppage in that one. But Canelo stopped Calen Plant in 2021 in November that year. And then Canelo Alvarez, he lost to Bivol, beat Golovkin, beat Ryder, beat Jermell Charlo, beat Munguia, beat Berlanga. You could argue that Edgar Berlanga had a better showing than anyone who's fought Canelo Alvarez since Dimitri Bivol. You could actually argue that.
I think you could.
I think he did better than Jaime Munguia did. I was surprised that Munguia got a bunch, like as many rounds as he did from the judges. I remember thinking like that didn't sound right.
Well, I remember the scorecards being like, I don't know about that, but I gave Berlanga like 2 rounds.
Yeah, me too. Munguia got a 115, 112 from Steve.
Yeah, that was wild. But
and then you have Jermell Charlo. Probably didn't win a round. Maybe he did, but he was actually like backing up the entire time and not like actively not trying to fight. And then
Charlo was the worst. I hated that fight. That was one of the worst fights I've seen because he fought scared and he just tried to survive. Like, did I just watch this fight of you trying to survive for that many rounds? That was probably one of the worst fights I've ever seen and one of the most disappointing fights because going into it, Brian and I would always have this debate where we would debate on who was the better Charlo brother.
And I would always say Jamal.
Yeah, and I was like going hard for Mel. I was like, no, it's Mel. I'm telling you, he's the better Charlo. And then he gets into the ring with Canelo, and it's like
survival.
Dude, you know what I mean?
It was like in a way Paul Butler kind of, but in a way actually finished Paul Butler. And then the John Ryder fight where I feel like we gave John Ryder way too much credit.
Al the Pal, thank you again. Knew it was going to 12. Canelo, don't take Hispanics and blacks out like that. Y'all know I called it. He has gone European fighters out of there. You know how I feel about those Euro level fighters. We're not going to get into that.
Billy Joe Saunders, Sergey Kovalev, Rocky Fielding are all some of the more recent Canelo stoppages. Liam Smith, Amir Khan counts because England.
I will say this. I did think Billy Joe Saunders fought a decent fight until his eye. Yeah. I thought he fought decently, dude. I was like, oh, like it was competitive. I thought he fought pretty well.
He won 2 or 3 rounds, but he only fought like 8. Like that.
Yeah.
So that's actually, and I was somebody who was like, man, Billy Joe Saunders, come on, bro.
I don't know, but let's get right into it, Brian, because I think this is the biggest question. We're gonna start off with Edgar Berlanga, though. Who do you want to see him fight next?
Trevor McCumby. I'm not joking. Like I legitimately want to see. I feel like it makes the most sense. Calen Plant apparently has a title now. I forgot that this was for a WBA title. BoxRec and the WBA had their little divorce. So, like, you got to dig a little bit deeper if you want to know what's going to be for a title. But forgot that they made this for a vacant title, which, okay, all right, cool. The WBA is going WBA, but listen, I think Edgar Berlanga is a potential future opponent for Calen Plant for that title. So logically, I would like to see Calen Plant get a title defense in his next fight. That put it in his hometown. You know what I mean? Like do that. Calen Plant, deserves one of those.
He's from
And
Nashville, right?
then you could look. Where is he from? Actually,
I know he's from Tennessee.
Well, he lives in Vegas. I know that. Okay, born in Nashville,
Okay.
Tennessee. Yeah. If he's all good back at the crib, put it in Nashville. Have him do a
That'd
little
be
title
sick.
defense
Yeah.
there. But then Calen Plant versus Edgar Berlanga. That's the fight we need to see eventually. I think we
Yeah.
should start working towards that. They've been talking shit to each other. End of the year, next year. I think that'd be great, or summer, or whatever. That's a fight
that's
you
a
would
big
want to
fight.
see, right? You would
I
want to
think
see that.
I think that's a big fight. I would pay to see that fight.
Yeah.
I would want to see that fight. There's a couple of other interesting fights. Of course, we mentioned Jaime Munguia. I also think Edgar Berlanga and Diego Pacheco would be really good. That's also a fight that I really want to see because I think Diego Pacheco is like he's that dude for me. I'm West Coast biased though, so
Do you think this is crazy to say because we were saying this about Edgar before, but now Edgar's fought Canelo. Jaime Munguia has at least fought Canelo and a couple other dudes too, but Canelo Alvarez, he beat Sergey Derevianchenko, who's tough as hell. Like,
yes,
I feel like Diego Pacheco needs a little bit more, maybe
he does.
A little bit more seasoning.
But there was
that's not to say he can't beat. Like I think at his best he'll be able to compete with some of these guys.
I think he's and listen, Edgar just fought Canelo, so I shouldn't be saying this, but I think Diego Pacheco could beat Edgar Berlanga, and I think he could beat Jaime Munguia. I think he beats both of them.
I think you have more people who would agree with you than you think.
Okay, good. Because listen, honestly, like I've watched a lot of Diego Pacheco, and to me, he is my favorite upcoming fighter in this weight class. But let's get over to the Canelo side, and we're gonna get to all your comments, guys. We're gonna get to it right after this. The other question is, yes, what is next for Canelo Alvarez? Because there were reports before the fight that he wanted that rematch with Dimitri Bivol. Do we get that Cinco de Mayo weekend?
Yeah, because we're probably not going to see Canelo again until May of next year. So that's a great point on your part. Honestly, I could see that. I don't know if Bivol, like how interested Bivol is going to be, but I mean, money talks, and we'll see. Because business-wise, this is interesting because Bivol is kind of working with the Saudis a little bit more. And Canelo Alvarez.
And Canelo's like, nah, fam. Right. I love that. I was thinking about that before the fight because Cool Boy Steph had a hat on after his fight that said Riyadh season. And the only thing that I was thinking about was like, you know what? I love the fact that Canelo, because he's that big. Like I was thinking about today, and this is off topic, but he is the greatest fighter of this generation. Like when I take a look back, like the last 10 years, Canelo's the one name other than Bud, obviously, but Canelo's been doing it for like the last 10 years and he's been so successful. I know a lot of people hate on Canelo and there's some people saying Canelo, but it's hard to not appreciate him. Like I'm at this point, I'm just appreciating watching him fight.
I agree with this comment from Rod, by the way. Love the analysis y'all have provided. Should have way more viewers. We're working. We're not like we don't do a lot of the smoke and mirrors that a lot of other places do, but I'm not going to get on my soapbox right now. This is a comment that I wanted to get to also. Ray Swisher, Edgar did a good job of working the ring early on, but Shantelle is right. He had to get off the ropes. Corners did the same thing. And I think
you're the bigger guy. Like Canelo shouldn't be walking you down. Right. And it's like, keep the fight in the middle of the ring, move around. Like his footwork isn't the best though. That's the thing. Like, I feel like sometimes Edgar can be like, like cement foot.
Yeah. I think he needs to figure out a way to not do what he was doing before, because that's not realistic as you level up in opposition, but we need to see that power more often because he has it. It's still there. And another comment, let's stop what we're doing because we have another super chat from Tyrone the Great.
Friend of the show who always donates. Thank you, Tyrone.
Good night of boxing. I want Edgar to get KO'd by Canelo. Canelo looked good. My boy Caleb got the TKO. Cool Boy came back from a knockdown. Beautiful fight. I don't think I want Bud Canelo anymore. I never did. Yeah. Trevor Crawford, by the way, tweeted out during the fight, put me in, coach.
I saw that. I laughed. I always wanted that fight. Remember how I would talk about it? Like, what if this happened? But then I saw Bud against Madrimov, and I kind of didn't want it after.
No, you're kidding. Oh, no.
You know what I mean? Jesus is giving me heat, but I feel like there's other fights to make, and of course we want the one with him and Benavidez. Like
Absolutely.
that is the only name I think that we want to hear. Canelo Alvarez fighting David Benavidez, because that is the fight with the storylines. That's a pay-per-view fight. That's a blockbuster fight, and it's also the young guy fighting the guy that's kind of been the king in on the pound for pound list for a minute. Depending on where you have him, he's been on that list for a long time. So I think that's the only fight that fans really want to see. But I don't think we're going to get it, Bryan.
Yeah, I don't know. We've been talking about this fight. By the way, we haven't been doing the show that long. We've been doing it for a year and a half. And since we started, we've been kind of talking about this fight more or less. Because around the time we started, Benavidez was fighting Calen Plant. It was around that time. And then I think one of the first things we probably talked about was, all right, Benavidez versus Canelo. What do we think if it were to happen? Canelo Alvarez fought, I believe, John Ryder. So, this is something that has been brewing for over a year, if I have my time correct. And I still think like I that's the fight that people would want. Like that's the fight that we want to see. We were saying before actually that Canelo Alvarez should fight the winner of Edgar Berlanga and Jaime Munguia if they fought each other. And instead he fights both of them. So now
yeah.
who's left?
Let's get to this comment by Jesus, because Jesus from the show, this is how he feels about Canelo. Shantelle, come on, fake Nello, not the best of this generation. James Toney says it. This is, you can see it right there, era. Fake Nello is part of it. I'll say this, and this is kind of a different take because like David Benavidez is also of Hispanic heritage, right? But he's also giving these young Latino fighters opportunities. Like he gave it to Jaime Munguia, he gave it to Edgar Berlanga. And I think we also have to look at that and give him credit, because once you're on that level, you are getting more eyes on you. Like we don't even look at that aspect of it, but he is giving these guys opportunities. They're way younger. So there's that. I just want to say that. I do feel like he gives fighters opportunities. I wish he never gave it to John Ryder, but you know what I mean.
Diego Pacheco is apparently the number one contender for the WBO.
Interesting.
Speaking of giving young guys opportunities, what if he fights Diego Pacheco?
I don't want that yet. No, Diego's not ready for that. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Listen, Edgar wasn't either.
We
were skeptical. Jaime Munguia was like. There's a world where and David Benavidez is at least saying publicly that he wants to stay at light heavyweight.
Yeah.
And we'll see. I don't know.
Nonito Donaire, by the way, Joseph, one of my favorite fighters to watch. Shantelle, Nonito Donaire been around putting in work way longer than Canelo. Sure, different weight classes, right? But I mean, there's a few fighters that you can mention in this generation. Chocolatito is like one of my favorite fighters of all time.
Tank also, by the way.
Yeah, Tank should be in that conversation, especially for like the newer generation. I think Tank's going to be around for a little bit longer as well. Let's get to some more comments, Bryan, because we got a bunch.
Also, I just want to put out there though, like the only acceptable Canelo Alvarez fight for me is Dave Benavidez next. I'll be fine with Bivol. I won't like it, but I'll be fine with it.
I don't want him in Bivol.
I don't want that fight. Because the number one contenders right now are Diego Pacheco and then Christian Mbili.
I'm like, I want to see Benavidez and Canelo, and if it's not that, then I just don't think we're gonna get Canelo and Bud. It's a dream fight, the weight class. Like I don't care to see it. All right, let's get to some more comments.
And he don't want to work with the Saudis.
Yeah, I think we need to get into this. Hey, Jesus, how you gonna hate on Danny like that, man? Erislandy Lara and Danny Garcia. Danny Garcia was it was hard to see. Like I'm a big Danny Garcia fan. Erislandy Lara was able to keep his title because that was his belt, right?
Yeah, WBA middleweight title.
And he got it done.
Middleweight is rough right now, bro.
I thought that it would go to decision, but listen, the way Lara was working the jab, the way that he was landing to the body, he was having way too much success against Danny Garcia, and that's why Danny Garcia's corner stopped it. Right? Threw in the towel. And I think that was the right thing to do. It was tough seeing Danny like that. Danny got dropped, and you could tell the fight was over when Danny got dropped. What were your thoughts on this fight, Brian? Because pure domination from Lara.
I found punch stats. Very
Okay.
excited about this. Very, very excited about this. Um,
Because they were
Eris,
getting boos. Remember? The people were booing them.
round one, end of
Yeah.
round one. I was worried about this fight stylistically because I was like, man, I don't know how much Danny Garcia has left, and we consider him a natural 140. Like even when he moved up to 147, I was like, is he gonna be like big enough for that weight class? And he had, you know, like modest amount of success compared to probably like how good he actually is, but it was also a very tough era for welterweights because goddamn, look at some of the guys who were top of the weight class: Thurman, Sean Porter, Terrence Crawford, who he didn't end up fighting, etc. There was one round where Danny Garcia did not land a single punch, and that was round 2, 0 for 8. He was I don't know where he threw 21 punches in round 1, but apparently he did, only landed 3. For the entire night, Erislandy Lara landed 63 punches, Danny Garcia 33 for the entire fight, 9 rounds. So Danny Garcia landed basically short of 4 punches per round, and Erislandy Lara about
That's the most disgusting stat I've ever heard, and not nasty like in a good way. You know what I mean? I hate that stat so much. Like are my ears bleeding? Like 4? He averaged 4. Oh, that's
under 4, and
terrible.
Lara 7 landed 7 punches per round.
Oh my god.
It was brutal. I can't believe Garcia threw apparently 196 total punches. I must have forgotten like at least 100 of those because I don't feel like he threw many at all. I'm sure a bunch of them were like throwaway shots, but he basically threw 21 punches per round. That sounds higher than what I would have thought. So, yeah. Attendance are probably sold out. I'm not sure, but it sounded like it was sold out in there.
I heard there was a fight at the Sphere. I heard there was a fight that went on at the UFC event. It was all over Twitter, right? I do want to say one thing though. I never liked Danny Garcia at 154. Never liked him at 154. When he lost to Spence at 147, he never even was crowned the king of the welterweight division. He lost to Spence and he moved up. And then we saw him fight one fight against Jose Benavidez, won by majority decision, if I'm not mistaken, and then took the longest layoff ever. And this is what we saw of Danny Garcia. He was that guy. Like, he was the king at 140. Dominated. That was his best weight class. And to see how it turned out tonight, just sad. You never want to see one of your favorite fighters look like that.
Attendance per Michelle Joy Phelps sold out 20,312 for Canelo Alvarez, Edgar Berlanga, despite UFC being there. But we kind of expected that because not all boxing and MMA fans cross over, you know?
Yeah. That makes sense, though. I mean, MMA fans are a little bit of a different vibe these days. You know what I'm saying? To say it in a nice way. Let's get to the.
Did they introduce Dude out at the event like they normally do for the main card? Did they do that this time?
I didn't even see it, man.
The debate loser. Did they do that?
Did they do that? I didn't even see it. I was too focused on this card. So let's get back to the card. Let's talk about Calen Plant and Trevor McCumby, because this was a great fight to watch. I was entertained the whole entire time. Brian, what were your thoughts?
You texted me early on, like, "Yo, what's happening to Calen Plant right now?"
Because I was like, "Yo," because I thought he would go in there, and I thought he was. And he did. He ended up getting the victory over Trevor McCumby, and he scored it in the fashion that I bet on. But my rest of my parlay was not looking good after Rolly didn't get the knockout or TKO victory.
I was 4 for 5 with my bets. I was great, other than the Lara decision.
Yeah, I took Lara on the money line because I wasn't sure. Like that was the fight that I wasn't sure about. But nonetheless, Calen Plant gets it done, but he gets dropped in that fight. So, yeah,
that was surprising. Calen Plant Like when he got dropped, I was legitimately like, all right. But then actually from the moment he got dropped, he turned it up and was like, all right, I'm back. Now, excuse me, speaking of long layoffs, year and a half away. We hadn't seen him since Dave Benavidez' fight. You saw it early on. Like it looked like that layoff was gonna be very damning. And Trevor McCumby, I'm like, all right, he's not a dude many people have seen. We've talked about it. We've seen him fight, but he's seldom been even on TV
He
prior to
got
this.
dropped. He got dropped by Felipe Romero.
Right.
So that's the only thing that was in my head the whole entire time when I was thinking about him fighting Caleb Plant. I was like, "Yo, Felipe dropped him. Like it's a wrap. It's a wrap. You know, he doesn't have a chance against Caleb." And then we get into the fight with Caleb Plant, and I'm like, "What is going on with Caleb?" He ended up getting the TKO victory, but still, it was a fight where Caleb looked rusty.
Yes, until he got dropped, and then he was like really in a rhythm after that. Like there was a point where he like just kind of palmed Trevor McCumby's head and like just backed away from one of the hooks. Like he just pulled and then just looked into the crowd. Like he was showboating or whatever the case. And then
it was my favorite fight of the night, actually.
He ended up getting to stop. Yeah, definitely of the fights on the main card. Although I actually really enjoyed the main event. I enjoyed Canelo versus Berlanga more than I thought I would.
Cool Boy Steph and Carlos Castro was really good.
We'll get to that next. We'll breeze through it, but Caleb Plant, I thought, had one of the better performances when you take into account just the second half of that fight. And again, I hope that he gets a title defense, like maybe in his hometown or just a meaningful title defense next. I'd be curious to see who they position him against in his next fight, because I do think him versus Berlanga is something that can happen down the line. But I don't think you do that next, because Berlanga needs to get a win next.
Yeah, of course. Let's get to that Cool Boy Steph fight against Carlos Castro. Stephen Fulton got dropped in that fight, and I don't know if he's still recovering from Inoue, but once you get knocked out in that fashion that he did and the way that he got beat against Inoue, I was wondering if there were going to be lingering effects. But this was a fight, Brian, that was an all-out war. It was a split decision victory for Cool Boy Steph, and I think he did enough to get the win, but I also think it could have gone either way. So if you're in the chat right now, let me know. Do you think Cool Boy Steph, and I saw a lot of this, was gifted that decision, or do you believe that the rightful guy won? I thought Cool Boy Steph did enough to win that fight, but if it went to Carlos Castro, like I wouldn't have been surprised.
Listen, Cool Boy Steph decision, Erislandy Lara money line was how I was able to redeem myself after losing Lara by decision. And then all my Canelo Berlanga bets hit, so I was happy about that. Carlos Castro is tough dude. All right, he was in there with Luis Neri. We talked about it. He was in there with Brandon Figueroa. Got dropped in both of those fights, but
he gave Luis Neri problems from what I remember. Yeah,
it was very close. It was a split decision loss, and you could argue he should have had that one too. I thought, to me, Stephen Fulton got this by a point. I do want to rewatch it. Fulton, this is tough because, long layoff and moving up a weight class post Inoue. So this is why we were kind of like, all right, he was like a 7-1 favorite or something like that. Like, it's a tough performance. And he tweeted out that he wants to be more active. All boxers say that. So we'll see.
Business, right? But I think it's just business.
Hopefully he is. Yeah,
Ray Swisha, thanks for dropping a comment on the chat. Cool Boy Steph showed heart. Definitely did. I'll give him credit because the layoff was long and he moved up. Excited for what he has next. Yeah, I think 126 is an extremely competitive weight class.
Yes.
And there's some interesting names there for sure, especially if Inoue's not up in there yet. You got to get yours while you can in that weight class. And it's interesting because Cool Boy Steph, I feel like Carlos Castro is such a tough fight. So I think for him moving up, fighting Carlos Castro, getting dropped, being able to recover, get the victory, I think that's impressive. For me, it is.
If you look at featherweight, just the top 10 dudes, at least if you use BoxRec rankings, which we've talked about, it's more data driven, so it can be a little bit wonky when you compare it to like how you actually feel about the fighters. But this is, and not the order per se, but in terms of just grabbing who you think the top 10 guys are, like Brandon Figueroa, Angelo Leo, Lee Wood, Rafael Espinoza, Robesi Ramirez, Stephen Fulton, Nick Ball, Luis Lopez, Ray Ford, Ray Vargas. Like, that's
Bruce
tough.
Carrington. Bruce
And
Carrington.
Bruce Carrington's right outside of that. And that's somebody
Yeah.
that we should be talking about. Carlos Castro's outside of that now. And we'll see about,
Robesi Ramirez.
Yeah. Like, this is a way more interesting weight class than, middleweight, which Erislandy Lara might be the best middleweight in boxing.
For sure. And for him to do it at this age is so impressive. And it just shows you, and like, let's be serious. Like, Lara gave Canelo a hard time.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah,
41.
like he did.
Who? Okay, here's a question. You're not gonna like this question. But
is Jesus gonna like it? If I don't like it, Jesus might like it.
I don't know. But Lara or Janibek, who wins?
I take Lara.
Oh shit.
Janibek to me is like fight somebody.
Right.
Like Lara's consistently done it. Lara's a champ, dude. He's consistently done it. And that, okay, so the one fight that I thought, and I go back to this all the time, that, well, obviously Triple G, when Canelo fought Triple G, I thought the first one was a draw. I
thought Triple G won the first one.
Yeah, Triple G won the first one. The second one was a draw.
Yeah.
And then the third one was like, I don't want to see Triple G like that.
Yeah.
So
and he still came on late.
Yeah. And then also, like, I thought Lara gave him a tough time. And that was one of the fights where I look on the record and I'm like, I don't know. Like, there are some blemishes on everyone's boxing record where you might, on the resume, where you can be like, you know what, I don't know if he won that fight. So
now, to be fair, Lara hasn't had like a legit, I don't feel like he's had a legit challenge since Castaño in 2019. Like, it's been 5 years basically.
Mm-hmm.
But now, like, if you look at Janibek, like, he hasn't been in the ring with anybody like that anybody cares about at this point of his career.
Even when he fights, I don't care. Like, it's one of those where I'm like, I don't know if
and
I
think he's good. I think he's potentially really good, but like I don't like, I'm not too interested in watching him fight Stephen Butler. He struggled against Denzel Bentley more than a lot of people.
Don't you badmouth Stephen Butler, okay?
Like Vincenzo Gualtieri, I mean, fine, okay, cool, that was unification, but this weight class is just not great. And the fact that Lara is at the top of it damn near, or actually he is. I want to see Carlos Adames fight one of these dudes. Him and Janibek were going back and forth. Janibek said that, he sent Adames an offer, but Adames is asking for way too much money, and it's just back and forth fucking boxing bullshit. So yeah. It is what it is.
We're getting some really weird comments in the chat that I'm not gonna read because I'm like, but yeah, even Brian.
No, but Joseph was commenting before. I don't know who these other dudes are, but
Joseph is cool. Joseph's a friend of the show.
But I don't wear bifocals. What are bifocals?
It has like that other thing in it. I think the glasses, like the I don't even know what bifocals.
No, it's just my light is in my eyes. That's all it is.
Golovkin Canelo trilogy looked like a sparring match. Joseph, it was hard to watch. Like, Triple G is one of my favorite fighters, and I didn't want to see him go out like that. It was worse than what we saw from Danny Garcia tonight, in my opinion. It was more heartbreaking.
I'm looking at the middleweight division, and I'm like, yo, I mean, well, one, Jamal Charlo, he did fight last year. We need to see where he's going to be. He's active, if he's even going to be in that weight class permanently. Troy Isley, who we've had on the show and may have back, like he has a pathway to actually beating like a bunch of these dudes.
Yeah, for sure. I think Troy's going to be fighting pretty soon as well.
Yes.
So we'll definitely try to get him back on the show. But at 160, Carlos Adames and Janibek, is that what we're going to see?
What else do we have to talk about from this card? Because middleweight's just a
Rolly.
Oh,
Rolly Romero. So I thought he needed a knockout or TKO victory tonight, and we didn't get that.
Also, former guest of the show.
Yeah, which is a pretty funny interview. If you haven't seen it, go check it out.
Yeah. Manuel Jaimes. Listen, it's fine. It was fine. Rolly was fine. Like I didn't have any big takeaways from this. I felt like it was 9-1 on all three scorecards. I felt like he struggled a little bit more than that. I wouldn't even say like we saw what we needed to see. I just think they're gonna position him in a spot where he's like, I don't want to say a gatekeeper, but they're gonna in his next fight, he's gonna be an underdog.
Does he have they were saying that he's one of the guys at 140 pounds that possesses some of the most power, but his power didn't really show tonight, I thought. Like he had a couple of good moments, but this was a tough fight at that. But I thought Rolly needed the knockout or TKO victory because now I'm taking a look at this division. And if it's not like a money fight with him and Ryan Garcia,
Right.
because I think that's the fight to make in that division, right? I don't really know where I see Rolly in that division and who I see him fighting because I don't know if he beats any of the top guys.
I mean, is he the Alberto Puello fight?
That's interesting.
You know, because I think business wise, that's a pretty easy one to put together. Puello we just saw on I think that was a PBC card also. Yeah. When he beat Gary Anton Russell. And
oh my god, I can't believe that happened too. Yeah, like that was another surprise, and I think that's activity.
By the way, I'm not sure Rolly can beat Russell, but yeah, Alberto Puello, he's still undefeated, by the way. But we saw him fight in June, and that was on it was a Tank Martin card. That's what it was. I mean, listen, like Rolly, because he's interesting, I could see them being like, all right, he gets another title shot. He fights Alberto Puello at 140. And I honestly think people would be like, yeah, okay, fine. Like they just re-resigned to it. I feel a little, I don't want to say bad for him, but like it's tough because he looked like a star just very early on. And he kind of got rushed to the Tank fight. And then after the Barroso fight, he gets pushed to the Isak Cruz fight. Like I kind of feel like he's been a little bit mismanaged. If that makes sense.
So this is what I want to say about Rolly. I feel like his attributes that are the best for Rolly is that he kind of fights like in a weird style, but he has this power. But then he tried to become more skilled and tried to like box, and that's not where Rolly's good. Right?
Edgar Berlanga's doing the same shit.
And I think you have to be true to yourself. Obviously, be better defensively. But I like the way he fought against Tank. Like I know he got knocked out, but it's Tank. And I thought he fought really well in that fight. And after that fight, I've just kind of been disappointed because I feel like he kind of tried to change it up, and that's all cool. But he's not fighting to where he's most successful. And he needs to throw those hands. He needs to let them go. So he's trying to be more skilled, and I don't know if it necessarily works. I think he needs to be more himself. What does it mean if you're a spinner? I don't even know. What does that even mean?
I don't want to look it up.
Okay, I just put it in the comments. I'm like, what does that even mean? Yeah. It's probably something bad, but whatever. Yeah. I was like, am I
I don't know how some of you dudes got here, but welcome. Okay. So I think do we have any other observations before we get out of here on this card in general? Because we were talking about it being not stacked in terms of like all the fights are competitive, but stacked in terms of like there are a lot of names that you care about here, you know. Romain Villa lost on the undercard, by the way. Like,
yeah.
And another Puerto Rican, Jonathan Lopez, ended up winning his fight by decision. So
Jonathan Lopez looks good.
We'll see what he does at super featherweight. So that's going to be interesting. But that's kind of what the card was. I mean, one-sided stuff, but interesting nonetheless.
So guys, by the way, just to let you know, we are going to be doing a preview show for the Anthony Joshua fight that's coming up. We're not going to have post-fight, but we will get you set for that fight. So make sure to look up that preview. Are you excited for that fight?
I am. I think Daniel Dubois, we'll talk about this during the week. I think he has a little bit more of a shot than I think people are sort of assessing.
I feel like AJ's looked really good though.
That's the thing. This is the best AJ's looked since before Ruiz, definitely.
Yeah.
Romain Villa was that Ryan. Was it minus 10,000?
That's crazy.
That could not. He got stopped, I think, in the third round of that fight too. Was it that much? Jesus Christ! I didn't bet on that. Can I just tell you what I bet on real quick? So I had Canelo Alvarez. This is my favorite one. Was Canelo Alvarez to win Canelo Alvarez to score a knockdown and over 6.5 rounds parlay. Also had Canelo to win and for round 7 to start, as if to say like he wasn't going to get the stoppage early, and got those two. and then the other parlay I told you about before. So I was happy about that.
Man, I
another
bet on
Canelo fight
Rolly.
last night
I
last.
did a big ass parlay, and the only one that messed me up is Rolly didn't get the knockout, and I knew that was a possibility, but I didn't want to take him on the money line. I didn't want to take him by decision. I was like, I'm going to take him by knockout.
I also had Edgar to be dropped between rounds 1 through 6.
Okay, that was a great fight. By the way, guys, if you like the content, please hit that like and subscribe button. It helps the channel grow. Also, follow us on our social media channels. We're at the Mandatory TKO. We're also on the audio side. So if you're ever not able to catch us and you want to listen to us, you can find us wherever you stream any of your shows or podcasts. So make sure to also leave a rate and review. Give us a 5-star. Any final thoughts, Brian, before we get up and out of here?
Yeah, as we mentioned, we're probably not doing a post-fight live on Saturday, unfortunately, just work obligations and things of that nature. But we will be previewing. We may not just talk about Anthony Joshua and Daniel Dubois, because Jaime Munguia does fight Friday, which is interesting. Richard Torres Jr. Now this is a walkover type of fight, but they gave him a heavyweight who has been in the ring with a lot of different dudes. Like,
I love Friday night boxing. Just want to say it's
yes.
it's my favorite thing. Like, we need more of it. I love those top ring cards.
Stephen Navarro, who's an interesting prospect. Emiliano Vargas, who you're obviously very, very high on. And then
big fan of the Vargas brothers.
Yeah, and then we have Daniel Dubois, Anthony Joshua, September 21st. That's going to be Saturday. Liam Smith, Josh Kelly is on that card too. Interesting. John Pascal's fighting that same day. Ugh. And then
oh my god, I don't remember the last time I've seen him fight.
So it'll be a little bit till our next post fight live.
You guys, it's time for the main event for UFC. So we're getting off here for perfect timing.
It hasn't started. The main event hasn't started yet.
No. Yep. They're headed to the octagon now. I just got the notification. So we ended the show. Perfect timing. Go enjoy UFC, the main event.
Who do you have?
Also, who do you think I took? Come on.
Sean O'Malley?
Yeah, I did. Who'd you take?
I didn't bet.
Oh, okay. That's surprising. And by the way, I wasn't throwing shade at the UFC. It's just sometimes their fans, they got a different fan base. Than boxing. That's all I was trying to say. And I think if you watch UFC, you'd kind of know that. But I did that's all I'm gonna say. Anyways, you guys, we're gonna be back. We're gonna give you a fight preview. Ryan, by the way, rocking with me too, O'Malley. So Ryan, Ryan has some good bets. That's all I'm saying. Ryan,
I thought Valentina Shevchenko would win, and that ended up happening against Alexa Grasso. So
yeah,
but we're talking about this.
Anyways, we're going to hop off, guys, so we can watch UFC. Thank you so much for rocking with us tonight. We appreciate you, and we'll be back with some more boxing content throughout the week. And remember, hit that like and subscribe button because it helps the channel grow. Thanks to everyone that showed out tonight, even the people that left some weird comments. We still appreciate you. And join us for the next live that we do. Brian, final thoughts?
Stop being weird, but watch the show.